What is going on, Lucid fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to give you an overview of what is happening with Lucid, go over some of the data points, what shorts are doing, but more specifically, I want to talk on Q3 production and delivery numbers and what they might look like. Before I get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's get right to it. So currently Lucid is down 2.15%, largely because of CPI. So on paper and just looking at the true numbers, it did show that it's in fact going up. So on a year over year, it came in at 3.7, forecast is 3.6. Month over month, it came in at 0.4 versus the forecast was at 0.3. But if you do look at the true numbers, it wasn't that big of a deal because the energy component did go up 1.5%, which does mean that the other basket items did go down pretty significantly. So I feel like this is a little bit more of an overreaction on the broader market in some cases, of course. But at the time of doing this video, no SEC filings, no press releases, nothing like that specific to Lucid. But when it comes down to production numbers and delivery numbers, obviously I think Rivian, NIO, Tesla have unveiled their numbers so far. Lucid historically was exactly this time last year on October the 12th. This is when they did unveil their production and delivery numbers for Q3. So I do feel that the majority of people are under the impression that it's going to be coming out this week, which I think it's fair to assume that it might actually come. But when it comes down to it, a lot of people do not know what the numbers might look like. And as it stands year to date, production, there's been 4,487 vehicles produced, 2,810 vehicles delivered. So when it comes down to it, they did say between 10 to 14,000 for the year end for produced. So they can easily do that, in my opinion, at least hit that 10. But there's a couple of things that you need to know. So from Q2, they did around 2,173 vehicles. And as far as deliveries, this is what caused, I think, a lot of people to be very uneasy about their Q2 earnings was when they saw this. So 1,404 vehicles. I do think that was rectified within Q3 because they did signal in their Q2 earnings the fact that there was just a lot of international deliveries that made it to, I guess, the country itself, but not to the customers. So they didn't really count as a check mark towards delivery. So I do feel like the Q3 numbers as far as delivery numbers might be a little bit higher than production numbers. But keep in mind, I'm not a financial advisor. You guys always do your own due diligence. So I did a poll on Twitter and of course, just asking people, what do you think about the Q3 production numbers? And oddly, it's kind of evenly divided. Some people feel like it's going to be over 3,000. Some oddly feel like it's going to be under 1,000 because there was that rumor that did come out that signaled in July of 2023 that there was only, I think, 300 and something vehicles registered, insinuating that Lucid didn't really produce that much. But it's kind of hard to tell until we actually do get the true numbers. Is this just pure speculation? But in my opinion, I do feel that given their target, in order for them to successfully hit it, I do feel it does need to be within the top 3 tiers. So above 2,000 at the very bare minimum. And there can't be any disruptions. And that's obviously assuming that delivery numbers far exceed production numbers. And because when it comes down to the Q2 numbers, if we are below the Q2 numbers, people are going to question a lot of things. Even though they did signal in Q4 of 2022, they signaled this. So it said starting in Q3, we may begin activating parts of phase 2 at AMP1. We expect some traditional downtime to occur. In Q4 with phase 2, we would expect higher efficiencies as specific shops come online and blah, blah, blah. So obviously Q4 numbers should be fairly significant. Q3, they would have experienced some downtime, which would have probably hurt some production numbers, but still, I do feel like it needs to be at least greater than 2,000 at the bare minimum and not have any kind of weird outliers such as delivery numbers, because they were able to get away with a valid excuse for the Q2 numbers. But if it does happen once again in Q3, then this is going to once again spook the broader market. So going back over here, I do feel based on the numbers, it needs to be greater than 2,000. And as far as delivery numbers, I feel like it's going to be more so around the 22 to 2,400. But that's just my own interpretation. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below, and potentially what do you think the true numbers are going to be? And as well, do you think that they're going to be coming out this week? or next week? What's your viewpoint on that? And when it comes down to some of the data points, I'll go over all of the fun jazz. So starting off with options, so $879,000 in calls being purchased versus 2.87 million in puts. So based on this information, people are anticipating for it to trend down, unfortunately. And based on specific call options, so this shows all the strike prices, expiry dates, it is anticipated by the end of next week to be above around $5.50 to $6, which is fairly good. And vice versa, looking at puts, majority of people, there's a large consensus around $5. So a lot of people are thinking and assuming, I guess, it's going to be sub $5 by the end of next week. But no matter what, when it comes down to options activity, it just is a segment. It doesn't move the stock price. These are some of the transactions that did occur on the secondary market over $100,000. So only one for today. It looks like it was first thing for $345,000. Other than that, though, it's been pretty quiet. But as far as the dark pool, these are some of the latest transactions. Last transactions, it looks like being on October the 2nd. So kind of quiet when it comes down to that. Dark pool is very much linked to shorting, so I'll give you an overview of that. And potentially, like I've signaled in the past, shorts have been overextending themselves quite significantly with Lucid. So if some good production numbers do come out, so going back over here for 1 second, if oddly enough it is above 3,000, which would be very impressive in my opinion, then that would really cause shorts some uneasiness and probably return some of their shares. My own opinion, but short score is currently 85, utilization is 95.83, and as far as what shorts are doing today, they are increasing 2.28 million shares. So the fact that it is red and that they are increasing their numbers, they do feel that it's justified and should actually be continuing to trend down. So similar to what the options activity is signaling, but 25.25% of the free float is being shorted. 222.01 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow average is opening up a little bit higher in comparison to yesterday. So 19.1% is that cost to borrow average. And through the interactive broker short availability does indicate that there's around 850,000 shares available to be shorted. So they are kind of running out of ammunition, but going back over here, you can tell that the number of retail investors have been getting in over the last little bit. So it's all correlated. It's one big cycle. So newer retail investors getting in most likely are lending out their shares, whether they know it or not. And of course, this is kind of just what feeds this. So cost to borrow and all of this is just basic supply and demand of available shares. And with newer investors potentially getting into Lucid, then that's how they're getting ammunition essentially, because it did go from the beginning of the morning around 35,000 shares to 850. So definitely some interesting stuff when it comes down to that. And over and above that though, let's talk on some technicals by looking at some of the fib levels with it being at $5.22. It is currently between this S1 and the pivot. So $5.10 is a very strong support, and vice versa, $5.67 is a very strong resistance. So most likely it is just going to be trading range bound between these 2 points. But with bank earnings coming tomorrow, and you never know, with Lucid maybe unveiling their Q2 or Q3 production and delivery numbers, that could give it justification to trade above and kind of touch this $5.67. But let me know your thoughts on that. Do you think that it is going to break higher? Do you think it's going to go back into the 4s? What's your viewpoint on Lucid? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that, and take advantage of these promos. So even though Lucid goes up, down, sideways, all over the place, take advantage of this. It's been extended up until October the 20th. Sign up for an account with Moonwoo, throw $100 at it, and you get 5 free stocks. Each stock is valued up to $2,000. So take advantage of this while you can. Link in the description below and also the comments. With all that said, I appreciate all of you watching, and let's all make a lot of money on Lucid.